final type of learning which is the moving into the spiritual and metaphysical, is tasleek. And tasleek is where somebody is actually helped along a spiritual journey of discovery. And this discovery is the discovery of the purpose of their life, and then also how to come to know their Lord. And this is at the center of the Islamic tradition of ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And tasleek historically, was the realm of tasawwuf. There's two aspects to it. One, I know some things intellectually about it, but I don't other than that, and that's why you don't talk about it. But the one that is of more interest to me is the behavioral aspects of spiritually aligning oneself with the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that relates to inward fiqh. There's outward rules, but then there's a fiqh of the batin. For instance, Allah says, الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. So khushu' is an internal state. It's not something that's taught in the books of fiqh. You don't have bab al-khushu'. You have like arkan al-salah, you have fara'id al-salah, sunan al-salah, the mandubat, the makruhat. That's what you learn. So if Allah describes the people of prayer as people of khushu', then understanding what khashya is, what it means to have khushu'. And the Prophet said, أَوَّلُ عِلْمٍ يُرْفَعْ الْخُشُوع. There's another hadith, أَوَّلُ عِلْمٍ يُرْفَعْ الْفَرَائِض. The first knowledge to go is the laws of inheritance. And in another hadith, the first knowledge to go is khushu', is this awe, this experience of God that's direct in the prayer. The way that ulama deal with those two hadiths is they say the first of the outward sciences to go is the inheritance laws. The first of the inward science to go is the khushu'. So learning, there are exercises, there are things to do that are beneficial even for young people to do them at an early age. Getting children in a stronger state of presence in their prayer and things like this. So there's much from our classical tradition that we can derive immense benefit from. We have many, many extraordinary manuals on childhood rearing and education written by some of the really greatest scholars. Muhammad bin Sahnun, the great scholar whose father is one of the most important Maliki fuqaha, wrote a book on raising children and the importance. If there's one single thing that I would like to leave with everybody, it is that punitive child rearing is probably the single most harmful thing that exists in the Muslim world today. I think that the Western laxity, which is often criticized by a lot of Muslims that I know, the idea of not disciplining your children is troubling. But what I have personally found is the single most important thing that children need is love, is an immense amount of love and care. If they're given that at an early period, they naturally will harmonize. But punitive, and this is an insight that I gleaned from the Muqaddimah of Ibn Khaldun, because for a long time I struggled to try to understand why the Muslim world was so incredibly dystopic and dysfunctional. And I really came to the conclusion that it's much of it is in child rearing. It's simply how children are raised. What Ibn Khaldun said is that when punitive measures are used on children, they become, he said that they learn deceit, hypocrisy, laziness. And you can see the section, it's in the section on education. There's a good translation by Franz Rosenthal. It's really worth looking at and thinking about. He said that when children are punished physically with abuse, he said they'll do anything to avoid pain. And so they become duplicitous and they begin to lie. And he said also that leads to this laziness and lethargy in their character. It's very important. One of the most extraordinary aspects of these giants that taught child rearing is they were all in agreement that you should never punish a child in front of other children. That humiliation is one of the worst things that you can do to a child. Dickens in David Copperfield says that, you know, a slight injustice to a little child is like a great injustice to an adult. Because in the child's world, a rocking horse is like a great Clydesdale. You know, they're living in a very different world from us. And we can easily become that ogre of the fairy tales, the giant that symbolizes everything that's frightening in the world. And so really making sure that our children are raised in environments which there is no humiliation. They're never humiliated in front of other children. They're not called stupid. They're not, you know, I take my children, if I need to do any kind of discipline, and I can honestly say I have 5 boys. I've never physically disciplined my children. And I don't have a discipline problem with children. I thank Allah for that. But I try to treat them like adults with dignity and maintain their dignity. It's very important that they have an understanding that you respect them as an individual. One of the Native Americans in America, Leonard Peltier, who was put in prison, but he was part of the American Indian movement. I saw an interview with him once, and they asked him how far he got in school, and he said he got to 8th grade. And that man asked him why. He's a really brilliant man, but he said, "Why'd you leave school?" And he said, "You know, the teacher one day he scolded me in front of the other kids, and he said, if you want to grow up and be somebody, then you better pay attention." And he said, "I knew I was already somebody." And I didn't want to be in that place anymore. And that really struck me as that concept is a very Islamic concept. That each person brings into the world that unique soul that is their own and that Allah has created. And in honoring that unique creation, you're honoring the creator of that creation. So